Hi, I am Rajendra Bade. Today we are going to study shear stresses. We will study state of single shear, double shear. Also a very important concept we are going to study today, complementary shear. I have seen many students, they don't understand this concept properly, and that is why they face difficulties in solving problems on subsequent chapters like shear stresses in beams or torsion or principal stresses. So watch this video very carefully up to the end. Let's start. Here is a block. Two-dimensional diagram of the same block. Now here I have applied a force at its end. Here it is force parallel to the cross section. Now consider a cross section. If I ask you, what is force on this cross section, or what force this cross section is resisting, then your answer is F. How we find force on a cross section? Sum of forces on any one side. The same thing we did in normal stresses, that is actually loaded bars. Simply add forces on any one side. So we have considered one cross section. It is carrying a force that is parallel to the cross section. So it is shear force. So this is the cross section. It is carrying shear force. Shear stress is a shear force divided by corresponding area. Simple. So like a normal stress, like tensile stress and compressive stress, shear stress also, force resisted per unit area. So when it is a shear force, that is force parallel to the cross section, then it is shear stress. So shear force divided by corresponding area. Notation Q for shear stress. So shear stress is shear force divided by corresponding cross sectional area. Now watch carefully here. I have shown deformation. This dotted line represents the block before application of load. The block before application of the load F. But when force F is applied, of course, all materials are elastic up to certain limit. So under this force, we are trying to visualize the deformation. This is the deformation. Here, the cross sections try to slide against each other, but because of which this deformation occurs. Let's assume that with respect to a reference cross section, let's consider that reference cross section here. With reference to this cross section, the cross section at free end has moved, say distance delta. L is length of the member. Now this diagram shows displacement over length L. So ratio of this displacement and corresponding length, that is shear strain. So shear strain is delta by L. Now this is angular deformation. Let's label this angle as a phi. Let's label this angle as phi. So now you can say that delta divided by L is nothing but tan phi by geometry of right angle triangle. So we can write tan phi is equal to delta by L. But the deformation here I have shown in the diagram, it is exaggerated, of course. This deformation is very, very small. So since this angle phi is very small, we can say that tan phi is equal to phi. So this shear strain relation we can write in terms of notations in this manner. Tan phi I have replaced here by phi. So phi is delta by L. So this phi is a shear strain. How we define shear strain again? Shear strain phi is angular deformation over length L in the direction of shear force. shear strain is given by the expression delta by L. Now we'll study what is modulus of rigidity. Modulus of rigidity or shear modulus. Young's modulus is related with normal stress, normal force. It is related with tension compression. But shear modulus is related with shear force, shear deformation. It has been found that shear stress is directly proportional to shear strain, and corresponding constant of proportionality is that shear modulus. The constant of proportionality is known as modulus of rigidity or shear modulus. Now, in different books, different notations are used. So, I advise students to be flexible with notation. We are going to use notation G for shear modulus. So, now watch here. Now, I am going to explain you, or I am going to make you visualize shear failure. It is the same block again, and it is acted upon by a shear force, and because of this shear force there is deformation up to certain limit. This deformation is directly proportional to applied load up to elastic limit. If you remove this force, the body will regain its original shape. But what if, because of this force, shear stress on this cross section exceeds the limit? It exceeds the shear strength of the object. Shear strength of material of the object means the maximum shear stress reached before fracture. Shear strength is that stress, that shear stress beyond which fracture occurs. So what if this shear force creates shear stress equal to the shear strength? Then of course the crack will develop and material will break into pieces. So this is how at weakest cross section, at weakest cross section fracture begins, and finally the two portions get separated. This is a fracture, failure. So what I want to visualize here is, in case of shear failure, the section at which failure occurs, surfaces slide against each other. Surfaces slide against each other. This is shear failure. Now try to understand single shear and double shear. What exactly it is? Now watch here. Here is a plate and another plate. Now I want to join these two plates by a rivet. Now same two plates I am showing here in two dimensions. So to connect these two plates by a rivet, I have made a hole. Now I am inserting a rivet in these two plates. So this end is then pressed to get that firm joint. So this is called a riveted joint. Right now in this diagram I have shown the joint with single rivet because I want to explain you the term single shear and double shear. So this is that riveted joint. Now try to understand what is single shear. Let's assume that this joint is acted upon by force P. But these two plates are not moving away from each other. That is because of this rivet. So up to certain limit, this joint will be intact. Now try to understand what force this rivet is experiencing. The upper half of the rivet, because it is in contact with upper plate, is experiencing force P in this direction. Lower half of the rivet is experiencing force P in the opposite direction. Now imagine a cross section here exactly at this joint, imagine cross section of the rivet. For this cross section of the rivet, this force P is a shear force. So shear stress in the rivet is shear force, that is P divided by cross sectional area of the rivet, which is circular cross section, pi d squared by 4. Now if you go on increasing this force P and stress in the rivet exceeds the limit, if it reaches the shear strength of material of the rivet, in that case this joint will fail because of failure of the rivet. And this is how, imagine this force P, we are increasing gradually, and a stage comes that joint breaks because of rivet failure. And this is how that joint breaks. Check how failure of rivet has occurred. This is that cross section of the rivet. It was a resisting force P initially, and then it failed to resist that force P and it broke. This is a single shear case. Why it is called single shear? It is this cross section. Only one cross section of the rivet is resisting that force P. Now let's compare it with double shear. Now here I am giving you example of double shear. Here three plates are connected to each other by single rivet. Force P is applied on the middle rivet, and by symmetry therefore on the in the opposite direction there must be force P by 2 and P by 2, so that sum of all forces acting on the joint is equal to 0. Now if you go on increasing force P up to certain limit, this joint will be intact. But if a joint fails due to failure of rivet, what exactly will happen? Let's check. So here is the rivet. Its middle portion is experiencing pull P in rightward direction, and the upper portion, upper 1/3 and lower 1/3 experiencing force P by 2 each in opposite direction. So rivet is in equilibrium. But if you go on increasing force P, a stage will come. A rivet will break. So let's visualize that failure of the rivet. So these are the two cross sections here. These two cross sections are resisting force P. If this force P is responsible for breaking the rivet, then it should create stress, that is shear strength of the material of the rivet at these two cross sections. So we can say that if this joint is intact, means a shear stress on the two cross sections is under limit. But if this shear stress exceeds the limit, this is how joint breaks. So have you realized here the rivet has failed at two cross sections. So it means the applied force P was resisted by these two cross sections. So this is case of double shear. Here we say that this rivet is in double shear. So when shear force is resisted across one cross sectional area, it is called as single shear. And if shear force is resisted across two cross sectional areas, then it is double shear. Okay, now the very important concept, that is complementary shear. Here is a block. Let's assume it is fixed at its one end. Now before we proceed with our discussion, I want to tell you something. Now watch here. Here it is x-axis, and this surface of the block is perpendicular to x-axis. Such a surface, such a plane, such a cross section which is perpendicular to x-axis is called x-plane. Here it is y-axis. So this surface is y-plane or y-surface. So lowest surface, bottom surface of the block, that is also y-plane or y-surface. Now here it is z-axis. So this surface which is on front side, this surface, that is Z plane or Z surface. So now if I use this term X surface, then you should understand that surface is perpendicular to X axis. So here is shear force, a force parallel to the X plane. So this force is a shear force for X plane or X surface. So of course there will be reaction at fixed support. So in general we say that at fixed support there is a reactive force and a reactive couple. So there is a reactive couple also. Of course sigma fx equal to 0. There is no force along x axis, so no reaction along x axis. So this is reactive force and this is reactive couple. So here is applied force F. A vertical force at its right end I have applied, imagine, and therefore there are reactions, a force and a couple at fixed end. Okay. Now I have considered a section here. Imagine a cross section here. Now what force this cross section is resisting? So add forces on the right side and we say that there is shear force F resisted by this cross sectional area A. This cross section is X plane. X plane means the plane perpendicular to X axis. Okay. So what is shear stress on this cross section? Q is equal to F upon A. Now I am going to explain you sign conventions used for shear force. Remember, everything you are studying now is new to you and it must be clear at this stage so that in subsequent topics you will not face any difficulties. Now here I have shown a bar of square cross section and it is acted upon by axial force P. Consider a cross section here. Now for this cross section, this force P is pull type of force. It is perpendicular to the cross section. It is normal force. It is a tension. So tension is positive and compression is negative. That is what you have studied in axially loaded bars. This is also one axially loaded bar. If I ask you what is force on this cross section, you add forces on any one side. So if you consider right side, we say there is a pull P. So on this bar there is P tension. If you consider left side, we again get the same answer. What we say, there is a pull P. Remember now, and this is very important, this force P is rightwards. This force P is leftwards. Body is in equilibrium, that means this rod is in equilibrium. Sum of all forces, so P positive rightwards and P negative leftwards, sum of forces is 0. I have seen many students getting confused in sign conventions used with reference to direction and sign conventions used with reference to nature of the force. Or tension positive, compression negative, rightwards positive, leftwards negative. I have seen many students totally getting confused in that initially, of course. So try to understand this. When you talk about forces acting on a body and you want to check equilibrium of the body, then we use sign convention for direction of the force, rightward positive, leftwards negative. But as I told you, in strength of materials, we are interested in forces resisted by cross sections of the bodies. Forces in members of the body means forces resisted by different cross sections of the body. Now consider this cross section. Now with reference to cross section, if I ask you what force is on the cross section, or what force the cross section is resisting. When you want to talk about force resisted by cross section of a body, then you should think about the nature of the force. And when it is normal force, that is perpendicular to the cross section, then you check whether it is a pull or push. So for this cross section, means when you talk about nature of a force, there is always a reference cross section. Remember this. So on this cross section, what is force? You say tension or pull. If you consider left side, again this force P with reference to this cross section, this force is pull. So when you talk about force on this cross section, it is tension, pull, and for this force also you say the same thing, pull. So when you talk about nature, both these forces are pull type of forces, and for this cross section, both these forces are positive. So try to understand. Right now, let's talk about normal force. This is what you have studied earlier, but with reference to the normal force, when you will study shear force or shear stresses, it will be very easy to understand. This line is this section, imagine. And on both sides of the section, this section is experiencing pull. So what is sign convention for normal force? Pull positive and push negative. So when you add forces on any one side of the section, to know what is force on the section, we use this sign convention if it is normal force. Pull positive or tension positive and compression negative. This is called nature of the force, not a direction. This is called nature of the force. So for normal force, we use these terms, tension and compression. For normal force, we use these terms to define nature. Are there particular terms used to define nature of shear force? Yes. So try to understand that now. Sign convention for shear force. Try to understand. This is a section, say this section. What is force on the right side? Add forces on the right side. So there is downward force F. On the right side, there is downward force. On the left side, if you add forces, then it is a force F upwards. Compare it with normal force. On this cross section on the right side, it is rightward force, and on the left side, it is leftward force. So as far as direction is concerned, these two forces are opposite. But nature is concerned, both these forces have same nature. And what is that? Pull. So similarly in this case, try to understand. On the right side downwards, but on the left side upwards. So they have different opposite directions. This is a positive shear. Try to understand. What exactly term used for like in normal stress, tension pull. Tension, this word is used to define nature. Similarly here, this shear is called clockwise shear. Clockwise shear. Why? Watch here, these two forces, downward force on the right side of section, upward force on the left side of section. These two forces suggest us clockwise rotation. That is why this term is used. Clockwise shear. If on a cross section, on the right side, if it is upward force, and therefore on the left side it is downward force, then it is anti-clockwise shear. Anti-clockwise shear is negative. Clockwise shear positive, anti-clockwise shear negative. For normal force, sign conventions are tension positive, compression negative. And for shear force, sign conventions are clockwise shear positive, anti-clockwise shear negative. Clockwise shear is positive, anti-clockwise shear is negative. Remember this sign convention. Now again there is possibility of confusion. Do you remember when you apply condition of equilibrium to check equilibrium of a body? Sum of moments is equal to 0. What is that universally accepted sign convention? Anti-clockwise moments positive and clockwise moments negative. But here it is exactly opposite. This is universally accepted sign convention for shear force. Clockwise shear positive and anti-clockwise shear negative. For shear force, sign convention is clockwise shear positive and anti-clockwise shear negative. Okay. So I explained you sign conventions for shear force. Clockwise shear positive, anti-clockwise shear negative. Okay. So let's proceed now. It is the same block here. Now I am trying to explain you what exactly complementary shear. Try to understand. Here is a block. Block has certain length L, certain height H, and certain width, say B. So length, height and width. In this block, let's consider a layer bounded by x planes. X plane means plane perpendicular to x axis. So here is a plane perpendicular to x axis, and at distance dx nearly equal to 0, another plane perpendicular to x axis. So we have considered a small or infinite decimally small portion of this block. Say it's single layer we have considered. Now we'll take horizontal sections, y planes, that is plane perpendicular to y axis, so parallel to this surface. This is one phi plane. So parallel to this section, we'll take two cross sections very close to each other. Say height is y, so dy. So watch here, this is this infinite decimally small layer. Now we are taking horizontal cross sections. So this is how we have cut it horizontally. And now we got portion of the same block has length dx and height dy, but still its width is original width of the block. Now we'll cut this object by two z planes. This is a z plane. So we'll use two z planes which are very close to each other. Distance between these two planes dz. Okay. So let's cut this block. This is that block and I am cutting it by two z plane. So now we got a small portion of this block. This portion has length dx, height dy and width dz. Let's assume that dx is equal to dy is equal to dz, then it is a cube. It is an infinite decimally small portion of this block. So it is as good as a point. So we have considered an infinite decimally small portion of this block. Now same portion I have enlarged here. Okay, first of all check its dimension. It's dx, height dy and dz. So it's a block. Now same block in two dimensions I am drawing here. So this distance is dx and this distance is dy, height of the block, and width of the block dz is now, since it is two-dimensional diagram, dz is perpendicular to the screen. Okay. So now this rectangle is nothing but a point in this loaded material. This is x surface and this is y surface. This is x surface and this is y surface. In three-dimensional diagram, this is x surface and this is y surface. Okay. So this is that shear stress Q. Correct? On the right side, it is downwards. On the left side, upwards. So this shear stress, tell me positive or negative? Positive, because the shear stress suggests us clockwise sense of rotation. So it's positive shear stress. So same shear stress I have shown here in two-dimensional diagram. Shear stress on the right side downward, shear stress on the left side upwards. These two forces has tendency to rotate this block in clockwise direction, but it doesn't rotate. If a body is in equilibrium, each and every point on the body is in equilibrium. And how it is possible? As you know, that materials up to certain limit has capabilities to resist the load. So when this clockwise shear comes into the picture, immediately material develops an anti-clockwise shear to resist it. So X surface is experiencing clockwise shear stress, then Y surface is experiencing anti-clockwise shear stress. So X plane, this surface, and Y plane, these are two perpendicular to each other surfaces. So now listen to me very carefully. On two perpendicular planes in a loaded member, it is also called as strained member. Listen to me very carefully. In a loaded member, at a point, on two perpendicular planes, shear stress has same magnitude but opposite nature. So on X plane it is clockwise shear and on Y plane it is anti-clockwise shear. That is called complementary shear. The shear stress on two perpendicular planes have same magnitude but opposite nature. They complement each other to maintain equilibrium of the body. Listen to me very carefully. It is very important concept. In a loaded member or a strained member, on two perpendicular planes at a point, shear stress has same magnitude but opposite in nature. So if on X plane shear stress is anti-clockwise, then on Y plane it must be clockwise, but same magnitude. So this is how we represent complementary shear in a diagram. Watch here. QXY. Q is a shear stress. And here QYX. Now try to understand how we label that. QXY. Q is magnitude of the shear stress. Now what is that XY? Try to understand. First letter here, that is X. That is the plane or surface on which this shear stress is. And Y is the direction in which the shear stress is. So this shear stress is along Y-axis. Y-axis is vertical. And this shear stress is on X surface. This is X surface. Surface perpendicular to X axis is X surface. So QXY, that means it is stress on X surface along Y axis. So in the same manner, QYX means stress on Y surface along X axis. On X surface, shear stress is clockwise. And on Y surface, shear stress is anti-clockwise. Shear stress on two perpendicular planes are called complementary shear. They are of same magnitude but opposite in nature. Let's solve this problem. Two steel plates, 120 mm wide and 8 mm thick. So these two plates are connected using a lap joint with rivets of diameter 16 mm as shown in figure. So there are two plates. Here it is front view of the joint and here top view of the two plates connected by 5 rivets. If the joint is subjected to 40 kN pull, find shear stress in rivets. So this is how on this joint pull type of force 40 kN is applied. When you watch this diagram, first thing you realize that the rivets are in single shear. rivets are in single shear. Each rivet is in single shear. That is only one cross-sectional area of each rivet. One cross-sectional area. Only one cross-section of each rivet is resisting the load. But each rivet is not resisting 40 kilonewton load. 5 rivets are resisting that 40 kilonewton load. So what is load on each rivet? 40 divided by 5. So each rivet is resisting 8 kilonewton load. And only one cross section of each rivet is resisting 8 kilonewton load. Rivets are in single shear, therefore only one cross section of each rivet is resisting 8 kilonewton load. What is cross sectional area of rivet? Pi d squared by 4, 64 pi. Shear stress in each rivet, shear force on each rivet divided by cross sectional area of each rivet, and we got the answer. Simple. Read the problem. Find smallest diameter bolt that can be used in the knuckle joint shown in figure. If load on the joint is 400 kilonewton, shearing strength of the material of the bolt is 300 megapascal. Take factor of safety as 4. Now watch here. This is knuckle joint. These two portions, this upper portion which is a U-shaped portion and this lower portion. These two portions are connected by a bolt. This bolt passes through holes in these two parts of the U shape and this middle portion. Now this U-shaped portion or fork type portion and this lower bar like portion, these two portions are connected by a bolt and they can move with respect to each other around that bolt. This is that joint. Much more about knuckle joint, of course, at higher semesters in machine design you are going to study. Right now our problem is to carry this 400 kilonewton load, what must be the cross-sectional area of the bolt? So you are designing this bolt, you can say. You are deciding the cross-sectional area of this bolt. So you must know permissible stress in the material of the bolt. Permissible stress is also called working stress or safe stress. But that is not given in the problem. What is given is the shearing strength of the material. And how much is it? 300 megapascal. Shearing strength of the material is 300 megapascal. I have repeatedly told you in this video what is shearing strength. Once again I am telling you, shearing strength is maximum stress reached before the failure, before the fracture occurs. So this is that stress beyond which fracture occurs. So this is of course not safe stress. So shearing strength or ultimate stress divided by factor of safety, that is working stress. So we say that working stress is indirectly given. Okay, so let's solve the problem. First of all, diameter of the bolt, cross-sectional area of the bolt, not given. In fact, we want to know diameter D. So in terms of D, this is the cross-sectional area. The bolt is in double shear. Watch here. Here is a cross section and here is another cross section. These two cross sections are resisting that applied load 400 kilonewton. That is what we say that the bolt is in double shear. That means this 400 kilonewton load which is on this bolt ultimately, there is only one bolt here. So that bolt is resisting 400 kilonewton. But if you watch the joint very carefully, two cross sections of the bolt are resisting this 400 kilonewton. So we say the bolt is in double shear. Okay. So two cross sections of the bolt are resisting 400 kilonewton load. Working stress is shear strength divided by factor of safety. 75 megapascal. So what is 75 megapascal? It is maximum permissible shear stress. In other words, this is working stress. So in working condition, stress in the bolt must not exceed 75 megapascal. So this stress is equal to force on the bolt divided by cross-sectional area resisting that force. So stress must not exceed 75. So shear stress is 75. Load on the bolt is 400 into 10 raised to 3. So in Newton. And denominator, watch carefully. It is twice pi d squared by 4 because the bolt is in double shear. So two cross sections are resisting that force. And now solve and get the answer. So this is the diameter required. So diameter of the bolt 58.27 millimeters. Let's solve this problem. What force is required to punch a 20 millimeter diameter hole in a plate that is 20 millimeter thick? Shear strength of the material of the plate is 350 mega Newton per meter squared. You know now, Newton per meter squared is Pascal. So it means it is 350 megapascal. We want to punch a 20 millimeter diameter hole in a plate that is 20 millimeter thick. Try to understand. Here is that plate 20 millimeter thick. And in this plate, we want to punch a hole of diameter 20. So here is punch. It is to be inserted forcefully in the plate to make a hole. So watch on the screen carefully. And this is how we have made the hole in the plate. Of course, the plate must be securely fixed when this punching operation is in progress. Okay, but now what I want to tell you here is, try to understand. Here we don't want safe stress. We are actually interested in making two parts of this plate. And I have made those two parts. Watch here. This cylindrical portion is now separated from the plate. Now failure has taken place on this cylindrical surface. Watch here. This cylindrical surface. That is the surface at which failure has taken place. So simple logic. When you want to make this hole, you should create the stress that will actually break along this surface. That will actually break the plate along this surface. So we should create this stress on this surface, this cylindrical surface. We should create this much stress. So what force is required? That is the question. Shear force is stress into area. What is that area where you should create shear stress 350 meganewton per meter squared so that at that area material breaks? Think in this manner. So this is that cylindrical area. Okay. Surface area we are talking about. Thickness of the plate is T and diameter of this surface is D. So pi D is circumference into T, thickness. So this is that area. We are not talking about this circular area. We are talking about this vertical cylindrical area. So pi D is circumference into thickness. This is how we have found out the area. This is how we should find the area. On this area, pi D into T, on this area, you should create shear stress 350 meganewton per meter square. So let's put the values. So shear stress, you want to create 350. It is not safe stress and we don't need here safe stress. We really want to break the plate along this surface. So on that surface, so pi D into T, diameter of the hole is 20 and thickness is 20 again. So to punch this hole in this plate, what force is required? 439.8 kilonewton. Thank you for watching my video. If you are satisfied with my video, please give me thumbs up, subscribe my channel, share my video. It is going to encourage me. In my next video, we'll study Poisson's ratio, relation between lateral strain and longitudinal strain. So stay tuned. Bye bye. Take care.